Hi folks, FPL General here again, recording a new episode of my 59th minute FPL podcast. I'm recording on Tuesday afternoon, the 29th of October, so we have EFL Cup games Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Manchester City are in action against Southampton tonight. I'd say the Southampton defenders are really looking forward to that one tonight after what happened on Friday night. So I think that one's going to determine. A lot of people are going to wait and see what Pep does with his starting lineup tonight, which players get 90 minutes, etc., before deciding what to do with our FPL teams for the weekend. So I'm hoping to sit down and watch that one tonight actually to see what happens. Shout outs first of all this week. Every Premier League player avoided the dreaded 59th minute shoutout this week. I think that might be the second week in a row actually. Two notable mentions here. The first one goes to Sigurdsson. Sigurdsson actually didn't start at the weekend, but he came off the bench and he played 60 minutes. So he actually almost managed a 59th minute appearance from the bench, which would have been pretty impressive. Looking at Siggy's minutes this season, he's come very close a few times. He's got a 60, he's got a 61, and he's got a 58. So surely before long he'll be getting a proper shout out and he'll be joining the 59th minute club with the likes of Barkley and Lamela and those guys. The other notable mention this week goes to Granit Xhaka. Crazy scenes at the Emirates when he was taken off, the fans booing him and him reacting. The funny thing was, all I was thinking about was, is he going to get the 59th minute appearance or not? He managed 60 minutes, and Arsenal fans will probably say he should have got a 59th minute appearance, because if he had jogged off the pitch like he should have, he probably would have got the 59 minutes. So maybe he knew he was going to get a mention here, so that's why he walked off. So you can blame me for Xhaka's actions at the weekend. Moving into a game week review now. So game week 10 was a good one for me. A healthy green arrow. I sat down on Friday night. My wife was going out on Friday night and I said, great, I'll sit down, watch the Leicester game, no distractions, just enjoy it. I didn't have any players in the game, so I was like, I'll just enjoy this as a pure watch. But very quickly that changed and it was just bang, 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 goal after goal. Having no players, there was people. I seen some people. I think a guy was on 99 points on Friday night. Triple captain Vardy, Chilwell, probably Tielemans as well. So it was crazy. So to come out of the game week with a green arrow, 61 points, having no Leicester players, I'm absolutely over the moon with that. I went from 461k, jumped up to 354k. So back-to-back green arrows of about 100,000 places now. And usually what that means is I'll probably fall back 200,000 places in game week 11, but hopefully not. Hopefully I can keep the momentum going, keep climbing. Still got the wildcard in the back pocket. I'll talk about that later because there's a question about it. Sitting on 548 points. I know some people like to compare points rather than rank. My transfer going into the weekend was Pukki out for Mopai, so probably my best transfer of the season. And it was just one of those feel-good transfers of, picking a player just because you like what you see of him week after week. And I've been really impressed with Mopai this season, and I just acted on it. 2 good fixtures, Everton, and now he's got Norwich coming up as well. So hopefully he can do really well against that Norwich defence for me as well. And that will turn out to be a really good transfer, hopefully, over those 2 game weeks. Obviously, Pukki did nothing again. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that Brighton-Norwich game now in terms of Mopai versus Pukki. So I'm probably not going to evaluate it until after that one, because Pukki could come out and score a couple of goals and Mopai blanks, and then it turns out that it wasn't a great transfer. It was all about the attackers for me this week. My defence did absolutely nothing. Pope, Trent, Robertson, Lundstrom, Tomori, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 points between the 4 of them. But the attackers made up for it. Mopai 9, Abraham got me 5. Mount got an assist as well. Salah coming in with his penalty. And then the City guys, De Bruyne got 6. And finally captained my highest scoring player, Raheem Sterling, to give me 22 points. So hopefully the captaincy luck is gonna change now. Probably going to leave it on him for game week 11 for that Southampton game. So hopefully Raheem can do the business again. So that was my game week 10, a good one. Hopefully game week 11 can be another good one. I've updated my watch list as I always do after a game week, so I'm going to talk about some of the players I've added this week and some of the players that I've removed. I'll start with the positives this week. First of all, the first player I added Friday night, Yuri Tielemans. He's 6.5 million now. I mentioned him a couple of podcasts ago. I think someone asked me a question a couple of weeks ago. Who do I prefer, Maddison or Tielemans? And I think I said on the podcast that I prefer the cash saving on Tielemans. But I do remember, I think it was Friday afternoon, somebody sent me a tweet on Twitter, just simply Tielemans or Maddison. I'm pretty sure I replied Maddison. So apologies to that person. Hopefully he didn't take my advice and went for Tielemans instead. There's not much between them. I think there's only 4 points. Tielemans has outscored Maddison by 4 points to this point. Price is the big difference here. You've got a bit of a cash saving if you go for Tielemans, and just going by that Southampton game. Now it's always dangerous to go on one game of an eye test, but to me in that game Tielemans was just a lot more involved in the attack and play. He looked the more likely throughout the game that he was going to get FPL points as opposed to Maddison. So again, I think I'm leaning towards Tielemans at the moment over Maddison, but again, that can change very quickly. Maddison is an extremely frustrating FPL asset. I mean, I don't have him. He did okay for me for a short spell last season, but what you often find with Maddison, I've said it a few times, he always passes the eye test, but he doesn't always get the FPL points, and we've seen it. If you didn't see that Leicester game and you looked at your live score app on your phone or whatever it is, and you see 9-0, and you're a Maddison owner, you're expecting 15, 20 points. It's disappointing that he only got 1 goal and a free kick at that. Apart from that, he didn't look threatening whatsoever. Playing quite deep in that game. But Tielemans and Maddison, that can happen with those two. One game you'll see Maddison being the most advanced, the next game you'll see Tielemans, so they do tend to kind of chop and change in that role. But I think if I was going for a Leicester midfielder now, I think I'd be going for Tielemans. Another player I've added, another midfielder, similar price to Tielemans, Pascal Gross, is 6.4 million. He's got an assist and a goal in his last 2 appearances. He did get taken off after 64 minutes, which is not ideal. I do always like my FPL players to play 90 minutes or at least close to 90 minutes. Another downside to Gross is the fixtures. So after Norwich this weekend, the fixtures get tricky for Brighton. So I don't know if I'll keep Mopai long term or if it'll be a 2-week fling and I get rid of him for someone more expensive. Cough, cough, Jamie Vardy. I need to get that guy. Pascal Gross, I really like him this season. Playing pretty high. We know he's a proven FPL asset when he's fit. Again, that is a big X in my book. Injury-prone players I don't like. So Pascal Gross, for that reason, I'm probably going to avoid him because he's an injury-prone player and because of the fixtures. And there's a lot of competition in that Brighton midfield with Trossard coming back now as well. So is he guaranteed to start every week? I'm not 100% sure. But I do like him. Maybe when the fixtures clear up later in the season, I'll look to Pascal Gross possibly, if he can avoid injury to that point. 2 strikers now. Lacazette, 9.3 million, and Marcus Rashford, 8.4 million. Both players, looking at the stats today on Fantasy Football Hub, both Lacazette and Rashford registered 5 shots in the box at the weekend. So shots in the box is a metric I always like to look at for strikers and for midfielders as well. Lacazette, first of all, he hasn't got much game time this season because of injury, but in all 3 starts he has got attack and return, so he's a very consistent player. We've seen that last season. Lacazette went very quietly last season about his business, racking up points in almost every game. Not always explosive, but very consistent, which is underrated when it comes to FPL players. If you've got a player who can bring in 4, 5, 6 points week after week, that's the kind of players you want to have. Another interesting stat today, looking at it, comparing Lacazette and Aubameyang in that Crystal Palace game. Lacazette had 8 touches in the box and Aubameyang had just 1. So it may be a case, which we've seen before, that Lacazette playing through the middle, and maybe Aubameyang plays more wide, and he's not in the box as much. No, I didn't watch that Arsenal game, so I can't give a proper eye test on what it was like. Which one of them was playing through the middle or whatever. It was only highlights I've seen of that game. But I'm not advocating buying an Arsenal player. I don't like Arsenal at the minute. I think if you've got Aubameyang, you've got a question: do you keep him or for that Wolves game, or do you just cut ties with Arsenal? But I think anyone who is looking to buy an Arsenal player, now I'm not advising it, but if you did, I would actually be quite tempted to go Lacazette over Aubameyang now. Big price saving. Those stats look good as well. And if he's going to be playing through the middle more so than Aubameyang, I like that. Differential, less than 2% owned. We know he's consistent when he's fit. So I do like the idea of Lacazette. But again, because we've got so many strikers, the likes of Vardy and the cheaper guys, and even some of the premiums as well, Lacazette is probably going to be ignored. But I think anyone who's brave enough to invest in an Arsenal player, I think Lacazette could reward you. Another player I think could reward you is Rashford. I like Martial as well. Martial, I think I added him to the watch list last week when I seen he was back from injury. So I've got Martial and Rashford on the watch list. Probably my only two United players that I've got any interest in. Now, it was Norwich at the weekend, so we can't get too excited. But when Martial plays, United are a much better attacking side. Some very interesting stats on Match of the Day at the weekend. Match of the Day 2, Sunday night. When Martial plays, I think our win percentage goes up to something like 77%, whereas without him it's down at like 28%. I think that's under Solskjaer since he's took over. So when Martial plays, United are a better side. And Martial's he's world class. I really like him. I really like that he's a midfielder in FPL, and he's a very, very tempting option. I don't think I'm going to go there just yet, but if he can keep, if he can stay fit, if he can start to show what he did earlier in the season, I think Martial will be, a very good option. I slightly prefer him over Rashford, but I think with both of these, Rashford and Martial, I think because of what happened earlier in the season, a lot of people jumped on them. A lot of people jumped on United after that 4-0 win over Chelsea, and then they got burned, obviously. I think that's going to put a lot of people off doing it again. People are going to think twice about getting United players, but just looking at the fixtures, short term, United have Bournemouth, Brighton, Sheffield United and Aston Villa. So 4 very nice fixtures coming up. And I think it's a bit like Lacazette. I think if you're brave enough to go for Lacazette or these United strikers, I think you could be rewarded. But as opposed to those people who are a bit more patient and a bit fearful of getting burned again. So I do like the Arsenal. I do like the Ars. I'm trying to say Manchester United here. I do like the United attackers in Rashford and Martial for the next couple of weeks. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit either of them in myself, but I've dished United a lot on this podcast last season and this season. But I'm feeling better about the attack now than I have done for quite a while. So I'll be interested to see how it plays out over the next few weeks. Rashford's coming off back-to-back 9-pointers. He's very quietly become the 6th highest scoring forward in the game. So if they could sort out bloody penalties, the Rashford would be even higher if he had to put away some of them penalties that he's missed. Martial as well. So yeah, I do like those two. Apart from that, when it comes to United, I'm probably not interested, but I am very tempted by Martial in particular. The last player I've added this week is actually a player I removed from the watch list last week, Yarmolenko. I removed him last week because he was benched and he only played 45 minutes, but he came back into the starting lineup at the weekend and he was excellent. 6 million, got an assist, should have had a lot more points in that game. Looking at the stats again, created 4 big chances, not just chances, big chances that should have been put away but by teammates. There was a couple of occasions too where he was very close to scoring himself. He almost got on the end of a Fornals cross. He should have got on the end of it, and there was another one from distance that just went wide as well. So I really like Yarmolenko. My issue with him is he plays for West Ham, and I always find West Ham a team hard to trust when it comes to FPL. But I think it's 6 million. I think he's a great price. I'm just going to get the fixtures up here as well. West Ham, they have Newcastle, Burnley, Spurs, Chelsea next, so it's not ideal. The next two look decent, but after that it might get a little bit more tricky. But yeah, I do like Yarmolenko, so he's back in my thoughts now. Which players did I remove from a watch list this week? Pretty easy this week. Willy Bolly's gone because I think it's a broken ankle he has. I think that's bad news for Wolves defensively. He's so important to that defence. So I think that's obviously bad news for Bolly owners, but I think it's bad news for anyone who has other Wolves defenders as well, that one. Chris Wood is gone as well because he's injured. Callum Wilson is gone because he's Callum Wilson. Bournemouth just aren't scoring goals. I think they might only have 1 in their last 3 games, maybe even 0. I need to check that. But they're just not scoring goals, so No interest in Callum Wilson for that reason. Aubameyang's gone from the watch list as well. I've had Aubameyang on my watch list all season, but it's come to the point now where I'm just set that I don't want to pay 11 plus million for an Arsenal forward. If I was going Arsenal, like I said, I would probably go Lacazette instead, but I would just avoid Arsenal completely until Emery goes. That might be controversial, but I mean, to me it looks like Emery doesn't have long left there, the way things are going, especially with the Xhaka situation and everything else. So interesting to see how that one plays out, but for now I think Arsenal are a bit of a mess and I would just avoid them. Apologies, Arsenal fans are going to be screaming into their headphones now. Another player I've removed this week is Danny Ings. He was on my watch list. He probably shouldn't have been because he goes against my rules of injury prone players. Pascal Gross probably falls into that as well. I tend to get excited by these players. Then I look at my A4 sheet that I've got stuck above my computer that says golden rules, and one of them is avoid injury prone players. So for that reason, Pascal Gross and Danny Ings are probably two players I'm unlikely to buy at any point this season. Ings was taken off during the massacre on Friday night just to probably look after his fitness, because he has played a lot of minutes recently, and we know Ings is a player who needs to be managed. Moving on now to answer some Twitter questions. An unbelievable amount of questions this week. I think I put out a tweet yesterday for questions. I think I got 86 replies of questions. So a lot of people have got dilemmas this week, or they don't know what they're doing. So I've picked out 5 or 6, as always, of the best ones. I'm just going to tackle a few of them. If I tackled all 86, it'd probably be a 6-hour podcast, so I won't bore you to tears with that. First question came in from FPL Strategy. If you did your wildcard this week, who are the premium players you would build your squad around? So good question here. A lot of people probably are on their wildcard or will be soon. Which premium players would I build my team around? So I think in defence, it would be Alexander-Arnold. I've seen a stat this week as well. In terms of defenders in Gameweek 10, Alexander-Arnold played 32 balls into the opposition's box. 32. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. I think the next best defender had 9, so that gives you an idea of how threatening Trent was at the weekend. For me, Trent is a season keeper, so he would definitely be in on a wild card. Midfield, De Bruyne, Sterling, a Liverpool midfielder. I still think I would stick to that structure that I currently have. Sterling and De Bruyne would be in there, and I don't think it matters too much which one you go for out of Salah and Mane. It really comes down to personal preference on that one. I think they're getting close in price now. I think there's only 0.5 roughly now in the difference, so there's not a huge difference there. Salah's obviously got the penalties, but as I tweeted at the weekend, I'm never confident when Salah steps up to take that penalty. It wasn't a good penalty either. It wasn't in the corner. I think Salah's got penalty misses in him, but hopefully it won't happen anytime soon. Who else would be in my wildcard squad? So Trent, De Bruyne, Sterling, a Liverpool midfielder, and probably Vardy now at this point. I think Vardy's probably the only must-have forward. You could argue Abraham's a must-have because of his ownership, but he's only got 1 goal in his last 5, so I don't think I would class him at the same level as Vardy at the minute. I think Vardy is looking like a must-have. I mean, I don't have him. I'll talk to him when I get to transfers. I'm probably not going to have him for the weekend either, but I think after that I'm going to have to take action and get him in. So I think that's the squad I would build around. I've got most of them already. Vardy's the only one I don't have, which is kind of a reason why I'm not really in any rush to wildcard, because I've got most of the players I have. I've got my core structure, and I'm happy around the fringes as well. The likes of your Lundstroms, your Tomoris, your Ricos. I've got the players I want, so there's no reason for me to wildcard just yet. Question from Vasa. Vasa asks, are we all chasing points and trying to go after Leicester assets? So there's a mad rush for Leicester assets this week. It's probably going to break records in FPL for one game week of how many players from one team were brought in. I looked at one point over the weekend, and 4 of the top 5 brought in players this week were Leicester players. So they're all going to get price rises off the back of that 9-0 result, and rightly so. Are we chasing points, trying to get them in now? I think we're always chasing points in FPL, aren't we? But, is it sustainable? Are these actually good assets? And I think they are. About 12 or 13 of Leicester's goals have come against 10 men. So 10 men against Southampton at the weekend and 10 men against Newcastle a couple of weeks ago as well. So, how much do you read into that? How much do you read into the Friday night fixture? A complete capitulation by Southampton. But overall, taking those two, if you take those two results out of it, I still think Leicester are an excellent side. Brendan Rodgers walked into a very nice job there with really good, exciting young talent, a great squad in place, and he's reaping the benefits of that now. So I really like Leicester assets. I think they're great value in FPL this season. I think they will finish top 4. I think I would be surprised if they don't at this point. They've got everything they need to do so. As long as they can avoid serious injuries, I think they will get a top 4 this season. So that's the way we've got to look at them in FPL. Look at them as a top 4 side on merit. So Vardy is a no-brainer. I like Tielemans. I still like Maddison. The wingers, there's probably a bit too much worry over game time for me with the likes of Barnes and Perez. They don't always play 90 minutes. Schmeichel's a great option. Soyuncu, Pereira, Chilwell, they're all great options. The whole team, probably apart from Ndidi, and you could argue probably Johnny Evans as well, are not viable. But are we chasing points? Yes, we are, but I still think we should be. We should be getting on a team that are a very good side, that have good fixtures as well. So I don't have any Leicester players at the minute, which is not ideal. I said on last week's podcast going into Game Week 10 that it didn't really bother me not having Leicester players. I kind of had to eat my words on that one, watching that game on Friday night. But again, who was to foresee a 9-0 victory? Come on. And again, I'm thinking the same way. It's Crystal Palace this weekend away. Crystal Palace is a tricky game for anyone. So again, it's not going to bother me too much. I mean, I'm not going out this week to rip up my team to get Vardy, to get these Leicester players. I'm happy enough to give it another week, give them another eye test, and then maybe get one or two of them in the following game week. So, are we chasing points? Yes, but I think it's justified. I think we've got to get a couple of Leicester players for our teams. FPL Oakwell asks, do I have any plans for the Man City Liverpool fixture in game week 12? Or what do we do? Or do we just write it out? So I think what he's saying here is most managers are going to have probably 5 or 6 players from that game, and what do we do? Do you bench a few of them? Do you sell a few of them? What do you do? And for me, this fixture doesn't even really factor into my thinking. When I've got premium players from premium teams, I just play them in every fixture anyway. So I've currently got 3 Liverpool and I've got 2 City, and I'll be playing all 5 of those guys in that fixture and just hoping for the best, hoping for probably a 4-4 with loads of goals from the attackers, and Trent and Robertson chip in with goals and assists as well. So yeah, I've got that fixture's not really impacting on any of my FPL thinking at the minute. I'm just going to write it out with that one. Question from Michael Lee Beard. Michael asks, I think there might be 2 questions in this one. Which players are you looking to keep for the season, and who will be the top FPL point scorer come game week 38? So which players in my squad am I looking to keep? So which of them do I see as season keepers? So I was actually just taking a look at this to write down which ones I hope I can keep for the season, and I was surprised by how many I currently have who I hope I will keep for the season. So Nick Pope, I'm not sure on him. I did go into the season viewing him as a season keeper, but I really like Matt Ryan at Brighton, racking up more saves, doing really well in the BPS as well. So, I'm going to keep Pope probably for the next 4 game weeks and then reassess. I think Pope has got some decent fixtures coming up. If he continues, if he doesn't do great in those 4, when it comes to my wildcard, whenever that is, I can see myself moving from Pope possibly to Matt Ryan. So I don't view Pope as a season keeper at the minute. The players I do view as hopefully season keepers are Trent and Robertson, Lundstrom, Sterling, De Bruyne, Mason Mount and Abraham. If they keep delivering, there's no reason to sell either of those 2. And I've got Rico on the bench. I mean, if he keeps his place in that Bournemouth team, he's going to be a season keeper as well. I was very impressed by Rico at the weekend again. I think he had 3 shots. Unlucky not to get attacking returns in that game. So I really like Rico, so hopefully he can keep his place. Question mark over Pope. Question mark over Salah as well. I don't really view Salah as a season keeper just now, because I could see myself moving to Mane at some point. But yeah, I think that those are my season keepers. Hopefully I can hold on to all of those guys. Second question there was, who will be the top FPL point scorer come the end of the season? I'm going to back Sterling this season, probably because I own him. and I want him to be the top point scorer. But I think this could be the season where he finally overtakes Salah. Salah's got it the last 2 seasons. I think Sterling has all the attributes needed to be the top point scorer in the game this season. He just needs his manager to play him in the majority of games, and he'll do it. So yeah, that is that question covered. Last one I'll tackle this week is from Richard Clark, one of the best FPL managers out there. Richard I think he's in a similar scenario to myself with his wildcard left. I presume he is when he's asking this question anyway. Richard asks, if not wildcarding game week 13 for the fixture swing for Liverpool, when do you think the next best time to use it is between now and Christmas? So very good question. And you know what? It's probably a question I haven't asked myself enough of yet. I should really be thinking about my wildcard a lot more. But it's funny with the wildcard this season. I mean, I've never had it this long. And I mean, I've seen so many people waste their wildcard this season. And I'm kind of in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, do you know what? Maybe I just won't use it because that way I can't waste it in a way. So I very unlikely that I'm not going to use it, but I wouldn't rule it out at this point. When is the best time to use it? If not using it for game week 13, I think, without having looked too far ahead, fixtures and stuff, we've got this Liverpool West Ham blank game week in game week 18, which is right before the fixture schedule really ramps up, for the festive fixture. So I can see myself, I think at this point that's the most likely time I'll play it, is sometime around that game week 18 blank, whether it's to navigate the blank or I don't know, maybe lose 1 or 2 Liverpool players before that blank 18 and then maybe wildcard 19 to get them back. That's probably my initial thoughts at the minute, but again, it's a long way away, and things will probably change before then. But for me, I think most likely very close to Christmas, Christmas itself, Boxing Day, around that time when just really to set up for the really busy, schedule, make sure I have a strong bench and stuff like that. But I mean, hopefully I'll be in a position at that point where I already have a strong bench and a strong squad. So, I find it a bit odd this season with a wild card. Usually I would have burned it, a long time ago, game week 4, 5, 6, most likely. So the way I'm playing is I'm just happy with my squad, and I'm just kind of forgetting that I have it. It's a bit of a comfort blanket. It does feel good to still have it, but as to when I'm going to play it, I have absolutely no idea at this point. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good sign that I'm happy with my squad, that I don't need it. So yeah, I think most likely for me, sometime around that game week 18 is most likely. Sorry I couldn't give a better answer there, Richard. I think asking me that question, it made me realise I need to look into it a bit more myself. Moving on now to game week 11, captaincy and transfers. Captaincy, I think, is going to be a pretty straightforward one this week. Any team that loses 9-0 and then plays Man City at the Etihad, I think it would be silly to not captain a Man City player this week. Again, like every week, which one do you captain? I'm lucky I've only got 2 of them. It's very hard for those who've got 3. Aguero owners were burned last week. I was very, very, very surprised Aguero didn't start last week, and I really felt for them Aguero owners last week, because if I had him, I'm pretty sure I would have captained him last week. And I think it's the same this week. It's home to Southampton. Surely this time Aguero plays. For me, just going to leave it on Sterling. De Bruyne is always a viable option. I think Aguero's a viable option. Again, minutes in the cup tonight will depend on that decision for a lot of people, I think. Liverpool are away at Aston Villa. Aston Villa, I like Villa this season a lot. I like them defensively, so I don't really like Salah or Mane in that one for captaincy. Part of me is actually tempted to captain Mopai at home to Norwich, given he was my hero last week and he's playing an awful Norwich defence this weekend. I can see him doing well. Am I brave enough to do that? No. Maybe if Man City weren't at home to Southampton, it's something I would have thought a lot more about. But for me, I think it'll be Sterling. So maybe I'll stick the vice captaincy on Mopai instead of Sterling, just to have a bit of fun with it, just in case Pep does a Pep and benches Sterling. Maybe it'll go to Mopai then. So I'll think about that one. Currently, my vice captain's on De Bruyne. It does feel silly to take it off and go to Mopai, but we'll see what happens before the weekend. Transfers for game week 11. I think it's going to be an easy one for me this week. Looking at my team for the weekend, I'm very happy with it, so I think I'm going to bank my transfer, as I try and do as often as possible. One move that does tempt me this week is Tomori for Cancelo. I've got a bit of cash in the bank after that Pukki to Mopai move, so Tomori to Cancelo is an option. But I don't love Man City's fixtures over the next few weeks. And really, Vardy is the one I need to think about. So rather than do Tomori to Cancelo, I think it's better for me to bank, have 2 free transfers for game week 12, and look to get Vardy in somehow for that Arsenal fixture at home, because I think Vardy will do well in that Arsenal game. So I want to have him for that one and for the foreseeable future after that. So I think that is an easy one for me. Bank the transfer and then figure out. I have no idea how I'm going to get Vardy next week, because I mean, it means losing someone. De Bruyne, Sterling, Salah, don't want to lose them. Trent and Robbo, don't really want to lose them. So hopefully I get some kind of injury maybe, or something that just makes up my mind for me, that I can just get Vardy in easily without having to pull my hair out about it all next week. So I'll see what happens game week 11. Hopefully Vardy stays quiet against Palace, and then I'll probably look to get him in then in game week 12. I don't worry about price changes either. This is a good example. Vardy's shooting up in price this week. He might even get a 0.3 rise. Doesn't bother me. I'm not going to get him this week just because he's rising in price. I'll happily pay 9.4, 9.5 for him, whatever it may be. I still think at 9.5 he'll be excellent value, compared to the other premium. So price changes don't force me to act. I think that's it covered for this week, folks. Hopefully you found this one useful. If you want to hear more from me, I'll be doing another podcast on Wednesday for patrons. I watched 5 games at the weekend, 90 minutes of all 5. So I'll be recording a podcast tomorrow to cover all those games in detail. I'll also be recording a podcast on Friday, which I always do for patrons, answering questions, talking about the press conferences, and just finalising my plans, transfers, captaincy, and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to hear those podcasts, it's patreon.com/FPL General. If you have any questions about Patreon, what is Patreon, what is Slack, what do I get, just send me a message on Twitter at FPL General, or send me an email. It's thefplgeneral@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about that. Whatever you're up to for the rest of the week, folks, have a good one. Enjoy the cup games if you're watching them, and good luck in game week 11, and I'll see you on the other side.